Most founders I talk to, listeners, are not confused because they lack intelligence. They're confused because they're overloaded. Too many inputs, too many opinions, too many stakes riding on every single decision. When you are building something from nothing, chaos feels normal. But chaos quietly taxes your belief. And when belief erodes, speed dies. Today's guest has lived at the extremes of pressure: Olympic level competition, world records, multiple technology startups, and decades studying how high performers make decisions when fear is loud. He argues something that might make some founders uncomfortable, that most businesses do not fail because of money, product, or talent. Not to think, um, but they fail because of fear and unresolved doubt. And instead of motivational talk, he built a system, a repeatable decision framework rooted in neuroscience called the BOODA Doctrine. Not to think better someday, but to decide faster today. So, welcome listeners to the BizBlend podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today's conversation is for founders, entrepreneurs who feel stuck between urgency and uncertainty. So, if you are carrying debt, doubt, or distraction, stay with us because clarity is not a feeling, it is a process. And listeners, meet my incredible guest, Patrick Sweeney. Patrick, welcome to BizBlend. It's really an honor to have you here.
Well, Sam, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And thanks to all the listeners who are tuning in. I really appreciate you giving your time to listen to our conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Patrick, let me tell all the listeners that, back last year when I did another podcast, Healthy Mind, Healthy Life with Patrick, something that I learned for the first time, heard for the first time is the OODA loop,
Mm.
the observe, orient, decide, act loop. And it was developed in the U.S. Air Force. So, and Patrick kind of touched down on the Buddha loop here. So we'll definitely explore that in today's conversation, listeners. But before that, Patrick, let me ask you that um, you say chaos is not the real problem here. Lack of pattern is. So, when a founder has so much on the plate, like juggling debt, team
Mm.
pressure, then there is economic market uncertainty. How exactly the Buddha doctrine turned chaos into something actionable? How does it become relevant here?
So the thing that most founders face is this illusion of agreement. So if you've got a team, if you have 3 or 4 people working for you, if you have 3 or 400 people working for you, it doesn't really matter because people tend to use the same words and we want to innovate. We want to have supremely satisfied customers. We want to be the fastest, the most expensive, the least expensive, whatever it is. People have common words that they use, but depending on the person, it can be very different in their mind. So you might have an executive team, your leadership team, if you're a founder, your leadership team may have 3 very different ideas, 4 very different ideas for the same thing that you think is a key mission. And that illusion of agreement, as I call it, is what puts all the energy and the belief in a company in different directions. And when the belief is going in different directions, it's like a bunch of people in a rowing shell trying to row in different directions. It just doesn't work.
Hmm. Hmm. And
And that's
where
and Sana, that's what creates the chaos, right? If somebody says we want to be the most innovative, let's call it home patient monitoring solution in the world, then for one person who, if the CEO is a former heart surgeon, like one of the companies I advise, she's going to say, well, we need to have clinical trials and this needs to be FDA approved and we have to go through this whole process. And that's to her thinking that she's going to be the best home health monitoring system there is. Well, the business development guy might be thinking, well, we need to get something out in our app quickly. We need to get users testing it. We need to get feedback. That's what will make us the most innovative. So everyone thinks, okay, we want to be the most innovative, but they all have different ideas to what they mean. And that creates this chaos. What you have to learn to do to be successful and really get past these sticking points is turn that chaos into a cadence.
Chaos into cadence. That's a good one. And I think it holds much more importance right now because not only we have different voices and opinions and thoughts to cater to surrounding us or physically, but then socially and online as well. So I think it's becomes more and more challenging as well at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And AI adds to the challenge, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. You also talk about something called the belief glut. Like, TMI, too much information, too many opinions, yeah, as you explained, and then not enough conviction. Um, how exactly all of this chaos that shows up in a founder's day-to-day behavior?
Mhm. Yeah, it's, like you were saying at the start of the conversation, Sana, startups don't fail because founders are lazy or they're underprepared. They fail because that doubt creeps in before their conviction, their belief has a chance to harden. So the way I talk about the belief gap and the belief glut in the new book, The Founder's Creed, is you have a vision as a founder, as an entrepreneur, where the world can be 5 years from now with your service or your product, or 10 years from now. You have this vision of where the world can be. That's on one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum is where the world is today. And that's what everyone believes. Everyone from your mom and dad to the first investor you talk to the first customer. They see the world as it is today. So the gap between your vision and what the rest of the world sees is what I call the belief gap. You, as a founder, have 100% belief that you can cross that gap. So now what your job is to convince internal supporters, so employees, angel investors, advisors, to cross that gap with you. And you also have external people that you have to convince to cross the gap. So investors and analysts and journalists and supporters. So you've got internal and external belief that you have to be building as a founder, and there's always a risk if you're not listening to the market, if you're not observing with an unblinking eye what's happening in your business, that you get stuck in what I call the belief glut. And that actually came that the phrase came when I was talking with one of my friends who's a Boston-based venture capitalist, Mike Troiano, and I was explaining the belief gap to him, and he said, I've seen as many companies fail from a belief glut, and what the belief glut is they have such strong belief they're sitting in their garage or their basement. They're making beautiful PowerPoint slides. They're filing patents, and they're doing this for months at a time. And they have no sales. They have no product market fit, and maybe they have no investors. But they're sitting in the office continuing to pound away without looking at what's going on externally, without going through those BOODA loops. And we can explain what it means to go through the BOODA loop, but that's how you get truth in your business, and that's how you get alignment, is that BOODA doctrine and running those BOODA loops. And so if you don't, if you skip those steps, then you're basically on this island all by yourself, and that's being in a belief glut. You believe too much in something that just isn't gonna come true.
Hmm. One thing that really piqued my interest is how you have to sometimes convince especially internal stakeholders. It could be your family members or your immediate maybe board members, investors, and then also external stakeholders. But especially I think this is something that is also valid in even a normal person's day-to-day life, especially Like if I'm going to take a big risk, which I feel after doing a very conscious analysis that yes, this is going to probably reap benefits for me in the long run, but then that is something against what, let's say, my father won't believe, because there's a huge generational gap in there. I think it becomes such an elephantine task to you kind of convince him, like, how good it is right now, because the point of view from where he is seeing this, or thinking, or even connect, like talking to me, is something that was not relevant maybe 15, 20, 30 years back.
Well, that is the nature of belief, right? If he was someone critical, then you want to have him convinced that your vision and your belief isn't fluff, that your belief is fuel. It's what's going to power you forward, and it's what gets you excited. Now, with your father, that's a very different. It's a very different. Let's call it sell, right? Right, because you're trying to convince him that you're not gonna do something stupid, and he, as a loving father, just wants the best for you, right? So you're not trying to get money from him or anything else, but, what you have to convince him is that you don't wanna just manage a business, you wanna lead a movement, and to do that, you've gotta start your own company, you've gotta be the one in charge taking the risk, and what you're comfortable with, and this is what great founders are all completely comfortable with, is uncertainty. You're okay to take that first step onto the tightrope that I talk about in the book, that goes from one tower in New York to the other tower, and do the tightrope walk across, and you're okay with that uncertainty. Your father, who's, older and probably more conservative and is concerned about you, may not understand that vision. So your job is to help him get that belief and to help him share your belief, because belief that's unshared, and this is true, Sana, for founders and entrepreneurs, especially, when they're starting to scale from maybe 5 employees to 50 employees. Belief that's unshared is a hallucination. And belief that's multiplied by every new hire is traction, and that builds momentum.
That's such a powerful highlight from this conversation, listeners. I have taken a mental note of that, and I request all of the listeners as well to do the same, because that is so, so right. That is so on point, Patrick.
Well, and son, I'm happy to talk to your father.
Please,
Yeah,
please.
Patrick's on the phone.
Oh, wonderful. Patrick, let's go to the Buddha doctrine, because how exactly this helps someone, especially when there is financial pressure, um, debt, ROI, investment. Like how does Buddha doctrine help someone make clean decisions when the clock is loud, the margin for error feels thin? Tightrope situation, yeah.
So, Sana, that's the absolute key, this is such a big takeaway for all your listeners. It might be the most important part of the conversation, that
Mm.
there isn't a good, tight decision. There isn't a perfect decision. The only thing there is a decision. It's not good news. It's not bad news. It's data. And what the BOODA loop helps you do is get more data very quickly. So let me back up for a second and give a quick little background on the OODA loop, which
Yeah.
some of your listeners may have heard of. And like you said at the start of the conversation, it was created by one of the greatest fighter pilot instructors in history. John Boyd was his name,
Yeah.
and he never lost a dogfight. In 10 years as an instructor, at the Air Force version of Top Gun, he'd let students get right behind him, what fighter pilots call on your six, and he'd say within 40 seconds, he could maneuver and kill the other pilot, get him in radar lock and kill him, and he never lost, in 10 years as a, fighter pilot instructor. And what he wanted to do was try and figure out how to teach other students the same way that he thought and he fought. So he came up with this thing called the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. And when you observe, you're looking at all the data and everything you know about the situation. When you
Mhm.
orient, that's actually the most important step. What you're doing is you're taking that information and you're filtering it in. Most people only filter based on where they are in life and what other people have put into their subconscious mind, right? Their teachers, their parents, their brothers and sisters. And so it's that orientation phase that you really have to look for different things and decisions and data. And then you decide and you act. And as soon as you act, you're going to come up with more data. And the key to winning in your marketplace is getting through these OODA loops as quickly as possible. And that's what I meant by the cadence. And so the cadence is how quickly you can run an OODA loop. Now, an OODA loop works for Top Gun pilots because they already know that they're the best fighter pilots in the world. They know they have the best airplanes in the world. They've got more training hours than anyone else. They've got the most sophisticated navigation systems and weapon systems. So they're indoctrinated with belief. So they can run the OODA loop with this incredible unwavering belief in themselves, right? Because the Air Force or the Navy has just printed that on them over years of training and indoctrination. And everybody knows it as well. So the OODA loop, some people have adopted it in sports, and Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, he uses it in their strategy planning every year, but startups can't use it effectively unless that B is there, and unless the belief comes in first, because the you want if you want to build a unicorn, you can't be managing this business. You really have to be building belief and conviction, and the more conviction you have, the more belief you have, the faster your decisions are being made. And that's really critical. So the nature of the Buddha doctrine is to get through a moment as quickly as possible, because as soon as you act, you're generating data that your competitors don't have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is, I think, this is such an important part, because it's not about pretending that pressure does not exist, everything is fine. It's, I think, about reducing the number of decisions that pressure touches.
Mm,
Uh, and um, another kind of a question that comes to my mind, because you deal with something like, fear. Like, today, like a few hours back, couple of hours back, I was having conversation on how, um, fear, anxiety drives, our decisions or how we react. Is there ever a point, Patrick, that, where fear is actually useful? Like, where doubt or that cautiousness, it protects a founder from reckless optimism, like, maybe reckless expansion. For example, we saw a number of case studies, especially during pandemic and even post pandemic as well, like where an entire industry, it got almost finished.
mhm. So my last book, which hit the bestseller list on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, is called
Yeah.
"Fear is Fuel." And so do I think you can use fear for good? Yes. It may not be in the way that you think, because the way your brain works is we have a fear center, and it's called the amygdala. It's a little gland about the size of an almond that's right behind your ears, and the amygdala handles the 3 Fs: fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what happens when you get scared. Your amygdala activates. It takes over the thinking part of your brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, which is where you make decisions, and it wants you to fight, flight, or freeze. And this is what explains, when people say they got so mad they saw red, or they were so scared, they couldn't move a muscle. And these are the reactions from the amygdala. The amygdala is running a 2 million-year-old piece of software. So it
Mhm.
really is only designed to help us procreate and move our next, get the next generation of our species moving forward. And that's the only thing it cares about, is keeping us alive to procreate. And while that might be fun, it doesn't help us in our day-to-day jobs, right? It doesn't help us when we have to make a decision, because there's really only two ways to make a decision. You either make a decision out of fear because you're afraid something's going to happen, or you make a decision out of opportunity because you think that there's something you can do there that is going to really benefit your company or yourself. And so if you're making those decisions out of fear, that almost always leads to regret. So what you have to do when you start to feel that fear, you have to lean into it and understand that you're getting a signal from the world that there's an opportunity for you here. It might be scary because you don't know the outcome, and our brain is wired, and that software is there to predict outcomes, right? Our brain is a prediction engine. We continually try and find the next thing that's going to happen, and when it doesn't happen the way we expect it, we get this uncertainty, and it produces something. Carl Friston is a brilliant neuroscientist, calls free energy. And so that free energy is what makes us feel scared when people say they're scared. So I think the thing that fear does is it gets more oxygen into your brain, it gets more oxygen to your muscles, it clears out your digestive system, it dilates your pupils so you see better, you hear better, you're in a better state to perform. So when you get that jolt of fear, if you can take a couple of deep breaths, and I teach something called a 4x4, which is breathe into a count of four, hold for a count of four, breathe out to a count of four. Navy SEALs call this box breathing.
Got
And
you.
what that does is really interesting from a neurological perspective. Your brain gets information two ways. Top down, which is everything from the outside, what it sees, what it hears, what it feels, and then bottom up, which is everything from the inside of the body. So if it's getting bottom up information, that we're not hyperventilating, we're not breathing super fast, we're breathing nice and control and calm, then it sends a signal to the amygdala saying, hey, we probably aren't in trouble because we're breathing normally and we're acting normally. So the amygdala will start to shut down. And so that idea that fear can be your early warning system for opportunity is really a great way to think about it. When you start to feel fear, you should stop and ask yourself, well, what's the opportunity here? What can I gain from this? What can I learn from this? What is the universe trying to show me that I need to learn?
Data.
Data, exactly, exactly. More data. No good news, no bad news, only data.
And only data. Yeah. And before we conclude, I think this is also kind of a very interesting, question. Now, we are now bringing so many other aspects into leadership, and especially around founders, talking about intuition, emotional intelligence. Now, some founders, they really pride themselves on intuition. So when probably they would hear about Buddha, and, they may worry that, it would turn leadership into a formula. So what do you say to them who believe, to leaders or founders who believe systems dull instinct?
Okay, I would easily tell them that with the Buddha doctrine, these systems open up opportunity for real value decision making. Because one of the things that, remember, I talked about that illusion of agreement. So once you get people aligned and everyone knows what innovative means, or everyone knows what supremely satisfied customer means, or everyone knows that we put customers before employees, or we put employees before customers, whatever your beliefs are, once everyone's aligned with them, then there's no argument and there's no debate. And every debate we have, every thought we go through costs us a cognitive tax, right? This is why famously Steve Jobs wore black mock turtlenecks. That's it. Zuckerberg, gray hoodies, right? Because they wanted to save their glucose, their energy, their oxygen for decisions that really mattered. So the Buddha doctrine helps take away a lot of that decision fatigue. And one of the best ways it does it is there's really three core components to the Buddha doctrine. One is a what I call a shared belief map, which is getting all your beliefs in the same direction. And the second one is the decision-making principles. Now, I came up with Asana because I was with a startup helping advise them. The venture firm brought me in, and they literally spent 5 hours debating where a logo should be on their app. And it was a heated discussion between 3 founders and 2 of their, marketing people. And, like, literally, they spent the whole afternoon. And so I said, "This is such a huge waste of your time and effort. You guys need decision-making principles that you all agree on and you can all look back on." So we came up with I think, for that company, we came up with 8 decision-making principles, and just to give you a couple examples, one is time-bound debates. So we said the thing we're gonna do onset of a meeting is set a time limit, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is, but we're gonna have a time limit, and we're gonna have a single-threaded owner, meaning one person who's responsible for whatever it is we're debating. So if it's it's a debate about the landing page on your website or on your client's website or something, you would say, "Okay, well, Sana's in charge of that. She's the single-thread owner. We're gonna debate it for 44 minutes, and at 44 minutes, she's gonna tell us what she decide because this isn't a democracy. This is a meritocracy, and we're gonna do what's best. And then when we do, with that time-bound debate, the next thing we're gonna do is everyone is gonna support it externally. So no one's gonna get on Slack and say, "Oh, such a stupid idea. I can't believe they went that way." We're all gonna be in support of every decision we make, and I call it no arguing in front of the kids.
Yeah.
But those once you make a set of principles like that, once you put your decision-making principles in place, you carve out so much room for important things like innovation, like strategy, like, HR and employee development. So having those systems in place really give you more energy and time and efficiency for the things that make you a great leader.
Yeah, yeah. And you actually really gave a practical example because um I absolutely um I prefer to work in a specific structure or a process. And I mean, even if it's a chaotic situation, at least there should be a defined structure to manage that, because sometimes even, contemplating the worst of the situations, I think at least that contemplation, that thinking, that analyzing at the back of the mind, that what is the plan A here, what could be the plan B, if plan B also doesn't work, what is the plan C here. I
Mhm,
think that is something
mhm.
I have learned through, in the early years of my professional life, through some really, really hard choices or decisions and moments. Yeah, I had to learn it along hard on the way. Yeah, along the way.
Well, those are oftentimes the best lessons, and it may not feel like it at the time, but, a lot of times you look back on it and say and that was the case with my first company with ServerVault, the first, cloud hosting company in Northern Virginia, and we ended up expanding throughout the world. I raised $35 billion and combined with another company, we had a $350 million exit at the end, and it was just an amazing experience, but I think I made every single mistake a first-time CEO could make. And it was incredibly painful to learn the terms that I didn't understand in the term sheet and how they impacted us later, the, level of integrity of the venture capitalists we brought in, and, some were good and some were thieves and just all sorts of drama, and pain at the time, right? It's painful, embarrassing, it's angering, but then looking back on it, that first company is what allowed me to build 4 other great companies, and so, everyone goes through those painful moments. It's what we do with the information from the pain that really determines what our future is.
Exactly. 100%. Amazing. So, Patrick, before we conclude, I think our listeners, especially all the founders and entrepreneurs who are listening, they would love to explore more about the Buddha doctrine and your book, and also connect with you. I'm very sure they would have their own thoughts and opinions after this conversation. So, what would be the easiest way?
Well, I would love to hear from everybody, and, the easiest way is to get me on LinkedIn, which is The Fear Guru, and, the same on Instagram, The Fear Guru, and I'm happy to speak with any of your listeners, and I'd love to hear their thoughts on the Buddha doctrine. And, of course, you can get the book, which is being released in March, but it's up for pre-order now at a 25% discount, and that is thefounderscreed.com, and thefounderscreed.com.
Amazing, amazing. And listeners, as I always do, I'll have all the links, all the details mentioned in the show notes. So just go check out, connect with Patrick, check out and pre order his book, and refer to the show notes attached along with this episode on whichever platform you are listening to your podcast right now. And if you are a founder in the middle of chaos and you are hearing this, there's nothing wrong with you for feeling uncertain. But then staying stuck, it is not a personality trait. It is usually a process problem. And what we explored today was not motivation, it was mechanics. How belief is built through motion, how speed is earned through clarity, and how fear loses power when decisions are no longer improvised. And what I have realized, listeners, is the Buddha doctrine is not about being fearless. It is about being decisive even when fear is there. And I think that is something, yeah, that is something. It takes time, listeners, trust me. But it is right. And if this conversation is challenging you, it's a good sign because growth rarely sounds comfortable at first. So, Patrick, thank you so much. I think this was such a scientific and also at the same time such a human led
Mhm.
discussion. So, thank you so much.
Son, it was wonderful speaking with you. Thank you, and I think that sums it up beautifully, and thank all your listeners for spending time with us today.
Amazing, amazing. And listeners, I also thank you as well for tuning into BizBlend. If today sparks something within you, do not just think about it, apply it. And this is your host, Sana, and I'll catch you in the next episode of BizBlend. Stay tuned.